If my life ended within this next hour, I have had the best 13 weeks of my life.
Hi, everyone. This video is a little bit of a different style than what I'm accustomed to sharing with you. But right now I have the most lovely woman in my private community. Her name is Diane. And she is going through an absolutely astounding personal transformation right now that I really feel compelled to share with you. So on the one hand, I really wanted to give Diane an opportunity to speak out her story and really have a moment to reflect on her own growth and progress. And on the other hand, I just think so many of you in this audience are going to be inspired by her story, especially those of you who have been dealing with things like chronic illness, chronic fatigue, chronic pain for a really long time. So I'll give you a condensed version of her story right now so you can get a sense of what you're about to hear. Diane is 66 years old, and she's been bedridden and housebound for 35 years. She has had to raise her 3 daughters from her bed, and she essentially never thought she'd be able to reintegrate herself or reconnect with the outside world. When I first met Diane, which was probably about 1 year ago now, she couldn't sit up for an extended period of time without getting absolutely exhausted. And she would often have to leave guided breath sessions early. She wouldn't be able to complete full sessions, especially in a group atmosphere. But 4 months ago, something incredible happened, and she managed to do the impossible, which was to take her very first steps outside completely unassisted. And since then, since 4 months ago, she's gone from being able to manage only about 100 steps to walking upwards of 13,000 steps per day. And she says that her dedicated breathwork practice has played a huge role in her ability to achieve this. So as you listen in, I just want you to hear and reflect on the sort of hand that Diane has been dealt in her life and see how that maybe resonates with what you're going through in your own life. And I also want you to listen into her absolutely unwavering discipline, consistency, tenacity, resilience. She has worked so hard and so tirelessly, and she is finally seeing the fruits of her labor. So I'm so honored to have Diane in my community and to be able to witness this powerful transformation that she's going through. She's a real inspiration for me in my life, and I hope her story will inspire you as well. Here's Diane.
Can you frame for anyone who listens to this a little bit about your ME diagnosis and kind of how long you had been bedridden and maybe some of the symptoms of that diagnosis? What do you experience on the daily that has kept you in bed for so many years?
Right. Well, I'm 66, and I first became aware of being ill when I was 2.5. So that's the first time I remember being in bed, if you want me to go back that far. Now, the one person or the 2 people that have given their 100% support and belief in me were my parents. And my mother fought for me because all the way through school, I was always off ill, and she always had to battle with what's the matter with it. And, you know, it wasn't just like a few days, it was always. So this has been a constant. And when I was 12, I got a GP who saw me through my teenage years, and I was a dancer. So trying to reconcile dancing with the condition and me having this fatigue didn't really go well together. I had a scholarship for the Royal Ballet when I was a teenager.
Wow.
Anyway, fast forward, and I was 16 and I went to ballet school. Fast forward about 18 months and I became ill. And it's been a constant. And I came home and my mum and dad took care of me again, patched me up. 6 weeks I was at home ill, patched me up, sent me back to college. And all the time, this is because of my tenacity of wanting to be able to prove myself.
Yeah.
So, you know, and I've always felt less than. I don't anymore. I will never feel less than again. but because I was never able to keep up with anybody, with schooling, with dancing, with whatever I tried, I was always ill and it always dragged me down. Fast forward, went to Barcelona to be a dancer, which I did until I was 21. And again, same thing, only I was ill for 3 months in Spain, came home, and my parents picked me up at Heathrow. I came home on a Friday, and they'd been in touch with the GP to say I was really ill. I'd had all these tests in Spain. And honestly, on the Monday, a psychiatrist came to the house because pain was in my legs. And of course, what did that psychiatrist conclude? It was all in my head. Then began 2.5 years of, well, I thought I was completely and utterly mad. That is when I met my husband. Whether that's got anything to do with it or not, I don't know. But all those years when I was at home, I would spend hours and hours in the library, in the medical section, reading through, and there was never anything that, there wasn't anything about fatigue and of course, as I say, my mum and dad, how they dealt with it was so amazing, because I would go to bed for weeks and they would and chivvy me along. They let me be. And so I met my husband at this time. So he met me ill.
Wow.
And I was in and out of hospital. I had tests for MS. I had every bloody test that you can imagine. Lumbar punctures, everything. And of course, the hardest part, Tara, is that when everything comes back negative, what?
Yep.
So I genuinely, honestly thought that I was completely mad. Now, this pain in my legs never went. And even on my wedding day, I can remember my dad coming downstairs, and my dad and me saying, I don't know if I can walk down the aisle, and him saying to me, don't worry, I've got you. Got married, and I began, so that was 2.5 years, I began to sort of pick up slightly. All this time, from the age of 12, this GP was amazing. Now, he always believed in me, again, like my mum and dad, but he knew nothing. All he had was a 12-year-old with symptoms that he believed me, and that was vital. Because I think genuinely, without the belief of him and my parents, God knows where I'd have been. And then I got pregnant. And I can remember my GP saying to my GP, going for the test, and him saying to me, well, I really wouldn't have advised you to get pregnant so soon. And I said to him, jokingly, because once you are, you are. And I said, a little bit of advice if you'd said to me, I think you ought to wait a little while. But of course, he was in a position where he felt he couldn't say that, because it's free will, isn't it? But subsequently, so I had my daughter. I was very ill again. And, whether that's pregnancy and the birth, and the one thing that had 3 girls, I've managed all without pain relief. Well, I had pain relief with Laura, all without stitches, all because I was so determined that I felt less than. So the one thing that I could control was how I was going to give birth and breastfed and, did all the things that I felt I could control. But all the time, Tara, I just have felt so ill and not normal in the, looking upon the world as normal. Fast forward 3 children, and I had a year of devastating things. I had my 3rd daughter, which I knew I shouldn't have had. I knew that I was getting to the point where me becoming ill was going into critical.
Yeah.
But at the time, I was only 30, and I didn't have the wherewithal to say I didn't want this baby. And everybody in the world kept saying, oh, you'll be fine. And of course, I wasn't. I ended up in a psychiatric hospital for 3 months. We lost a best friend. I came out of hospital after 3 months. My husband's mother got cancer. I went to look after her. I mean, this is very personal, but I then got pregnant again. And from the minute that test came back positive, I had another GP by then who was brilliant, and I had a termination. So this was all in the space of like 8 months.
Oh my God.
So I had a termination. My husband's mother died. A friend committed suicide. So this is all within. And then the following April, so my daughter was 1, and the following April, I'd spent that year, and obviously all these life events have an effect.
Sure.
Everything. And I honestly and truthfully, this is as genuine as it was. We went away for a few days and we came back home, and I was so ill on the journey home, and I just said to my husband, I've got to go to bed, and I never got up.
Wow.
And that is the 35 years, genuinely and honestly.
Wow.
I know. Oh,
So 35 years in bed, raising your 3 daughters from bed, managing everything, the whole family, basically, from this
From my
bedridden. Yeah, unbelievable.
Yeah. And now I'm proud of myself for what I've done. I'm proud of the way I've coped. I'm proud of my 3 daughters, of how they have their life. And I'm proud of the fact that I have got through and survived this. And I mean, when you met me, I couldn't sit up.
Yep.
So I know when you said to me a few weeks ago about like a transformation and, relationships fall by the wayside. And I don't think I've really thought about it being a transformation, but I'm now believing more and more in myself in that it is.
Yeah.
Please don't think, and I will never have anybody say that this illness has not been real, because it is as real as, because it is, and it's devastating.
Yeah.
It's crushing.
Yeah.
And I've had 2 suicide attempts.
I believe it. Mm-hmm.
And fortunately, I'm still here, so they didn't work. But so all of that compounded, all of this pain, and the pain is, I still have the pain. I still have terrible pain. I still have to be very, very careful. I Still have to pace myself. But the difference in the last 13 weeks since I started walking is phenomenal.
Yeah. I want to get into it, but I want to ask you a few questions before we get to this climax of this massive transformation you've gone through in the last 3 months, which is just mind-boggling to me. So Diane, I know over these 35 years, you've probably also tried a million things. Like you said, you're reading all the time, researching all the time, trying to find solutions. What is it that drew you to breathing eventually? What was it that was so interesting? And maybe also what made you want to work with me specifically? I'm also curious.
It's the gospel truth. I listened to a radio host here in Britain called Chris Evans, and he was a proponent of Wim Hof. Now, I'd never heard of, and I started to look into it because it was just all this way along the journey has been, what can I do to make myself better? So 2 years ago, and it's 2 years this July, so I'm past my 2 year. Started off with Wim Hof 3 times a day, morning, lunch, and tea time.
Wow.
And after 3 months, I could say that I could feel a difference. And I have had an ME coach from the ME clinic in York for 8 years. And when I told her, she'd never even heard of Wim Hof. So, so you go off anyway. So carried on doing that, and it became a discipline. And I've realized that with dancing and everything else, discipline was, and it grounded me. So I'd wake and trust me, there have been times when doing the breathing has been hard.
Yeah.
But I made myself do it. So, and I can't say, a year went by, I still didn't, I felt a bit better, but, but I still kept at it. And the coincidence with you was finding you on YouTube. Now, and you've just done a podcast with Mike Meyer.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I started listening to all his podcasts on breathwork.
Wow.
And followed him for quite a long time. But something, and this is what I don't understand, but I'm very grateful for, something drew me to you. And that's the gospel truth.
Yeah.
I think it was your gentleness, your just that, really, truthfully, your gentle and your belief in what you were trying to teach. And so that's what started my journey with you. And I'm being honest.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful that I found you.
Oh, I'm grateful to have you as well. You're such an important part of my community. So I'm so happy to have you and to be a small part of this journey that you're going through. It's such an honor for me.
Big part, because now, and I've said this to you before, and you must have, because it's your life, and I just said to somebody yesterday, there was, it's people saying to me, oh, it's a miracle. And I said, it's not a miracle. It's my hard work that's got me there. And, well, what? And I said, oh, well, I do breath work. And they look at you as though you're nuts. And I think, oh, I can't be bothered. But at the same time, I want to be bothered because I explain to everybody what you've taught me is that you can and have got control. And it's the one thing. And as I say, I've just listened to Andrew Huberman's 2-hour talk on, and I mean, I listen to him every morning on my walk, and he blows my mind.
Yeah.
So, but the breathwork thing, I just don't think, unless you are or I am now, I hope, part of this community, people think you're completely nuts, don't they?
Unfortunately, yeah. I'm not sure why it's such a natural foundational thing that every species on this planet does. Plants do it, fungi do it, every animal has to respire, but we think it sounds like a crazy, weird, sort of, I guess, hippie, weird thing to be doing, but I don't know why either.
Everybody thinks that, unless you breathe, you die, which we know is the truth. But I don't think, and I'm hoping this is people's ignorance, fingers crossed, that they can really get their heads around the fact that it is, and you've taught me this, something you can learn, grow from, and control.
Yeah.
That the illness, or whatever this illness is, and this is what has always bothered me, is that why do we try and decompartmentalize your brain from your body, from your bits? Because
Right.
you're a whole person.
Yes. Obvious. It's so obvious.
Yes, but it's like the breathing. It's like, why do people, well, even the medical profession don't get it, do they?
I think it's starting maybe very slowly. I see it trickling, but it's such a slow process to get it to expand across the world. Very slow.
Yeah. Anyway, carry on. Sorry, carry on.
This is great. So Diane, I really want to talk about this first walk you took. It was in March or in May that you had this idea? May.
It was third.
Oh, okay. So let's set the scene again. So you've been going through this pain, this crazy fatigue, this illness since the age of 2. You have been bedridden for probably 35 years, raising your children from bed, doing all the family stuff from bed, not even being able to navigate the town that you live in, not seeing your friends. And everyone in your life knows you as the woman who has to stay in bed. That's like become your identity to the outside world. And then back in May, so that's maybe May, April, May, June, July, August. So 4 months, maybe 4 months ago, you wake up with this idea. You say, enough is enough. I'm not even going to tell anyone I'm doing it. I am going to go walk outside on my own and see what happens. So I want to hear how you got to that place of feeling so sick and then suddenly saying, you know what? I'm going to try this. It's like time for me to evolve.
Right. What happened was my fear over the 35 years was ending up in hospital. I had an accident at home and I ended up in hospital. It's still very emotional because I'm still suffering from the after effects of the accident. I fell on my face and I've got an adapted space. And it was like, and I've got a concrete floor with one carpet tile, and it felt like a gunshot. Anyway, fast forward. So I ended up in hospital. They wanted to keep me in. I freaked out because I was 7. I know that this is the American bit of me asking for a gurney when really I meant all I wanted to do was find a bed.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I was 17 hours in A&E, which is a hell of a long time. And then they wanted to keep me in. And I didn't want to stay in, but, I had to. So I was in for 48 hours. And when I got home, I'd survived. And I had spent the whole time I was in doing the one thing I was terrified of, which was explaining to every medic, every orderly, every person that came to see me, because I was in my wheelchair then. I had this condition. And as I say, I had 2 doctors and a consultant, and neither of them had heard of ME.
Wow.
And I know. And it's like, what?
Yeah.
How can I have lived my life and the last 35 years with this? And the one bit of recognition was when I mentioned long COVID. was like, oh, yeah, well, we've heard of that. And I got, and because I get tired, and this was my fear all this time, was having to do all of this explanation. So having got home from hospital, I'd survived what had been my fear for 35 years.
Wow.
And I thought, I'll swear, but I won't.
You can.
You know, I've survived. I've actually survived. So I spent 2 days, which was the Monday and the Tuesday, assimilating what had happened, all the time with a terrible facial injury. Really.
Yeah.
And on the Wednesday morning, and I'd say I'd only got trainers 5 weeks previously, so I'd not even worn those to walk outside. This is the truth. I'm being honest.
Yeah.
Woke up and I just thought, what is stopping me opening my front door and walking outside? So I did it.
Wow.
And for 8 years, the pacing I had done at home, the maximum amount of steps that I had walked within the home were 100. My average number of steps for 2022 was 77 a day.
Wow.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
I've got, yeah. So I walked, I opened the front door and it was like 5 o'clock in the morning. And I can't even tell you which direction I went in, but I went 50 steps, whichever direction, and 50 steps back. Got into bed and thought, bloody hell, I've done it. I've climbed Mount Everest. I've walked outside on my own for 50 steps. And then I just thought the next day, well, you've got to build on that. And 20, 30. And then I just kept going. And as I say, it was a week. And honestly and truthfully, Tara, it was so precious. It was so my story. Unfortunately or fortunately, I had a husband. And I didn't want, he was the last person I wanted to know. But I felt safe, I felt secure, but I was beginning to think maybe somebody else should know. So that's when I told my daughter, who was blown away. She was so supportive and so wonderful. So that took place. So it was about 10 days. And the only reason I told my husband was because I was seen. So after about 10 days, the other important part of this was the day before I started to walk, I'd had an assessment for a new wheelchair.
Wow.
And looking back now, I think something in me clicked.
Yeah.
I think it was knowing I had to go through this assessment, knowing that if I wanted to get out, then I was going to have a wheelchair. And I'd looked at electric wheelchairs and all the rest of it. So this assessment phone call happened the day before I started to walk. You know, looking back now, I think possibly that was a little bit of a click, but whether it, because I've just had the letter through to say that I'm eligible for the assessment. And so we're how long? 13 weeks in. And I just keep it to frame it because what? I mean, well, yeah, because I don't need it, do I?
Well, 13 weeks in. So now what's your average step count per day as of right now in the last 3 months?
7,000.
Wait, say it one more time.
About 7,000.
7,000 per day.
Yeah, I've done the most I've walked is 13,000 in a day. And this morning I've done 7,200.
Wow. I mean, it's at the point now where, at least in America, I'm assuming Europe is like this too. You know, we have this mantra of you have to get at least your 10,000 steps a day. Like healthy adults aren't walking this much. And here you come out of bed for the first time in 35 years, and you're just dominating. You're just taking over. And what really struck me was you told me one story of how your grandchildren have only ever known you as the grandma in bed, and you were able to finally walk them to school one day. And you also told me that this town that's been your home since you were a kid is like transformed around you. You were getting lost in your own village, basically.
Absolutely. And now, and I went out this morning. I've discovered, and this is what I think, right. I went to walk on this dual carriageway, which was dumb, because I realised when I was sort of halfway down this dual carriageway, there was no pavement.
Oh.
That's silly. But the thing is, when I'm there, it's like, well, if I go back, I've only got to walk back. I might as well carry on. Anyway, I didn't get knocked over and I'm still here. And I managed.
Thank God.
But yes, but so in this weird way, I do feel as if I'm being taken care of, because every little experience and every little thing that I'm doing on a daily basis, I'm still here. I'm still, and if my life ended within this next hour, I have had the best 13 weeks of my life. And it's true.
Yeah.
So to say, and this is the gospel truth, to say that at 66, I feel the most well I've ever felt, still with disability, still with a huge amount of pain, still with having to pace myself. I think it's amazing.
Yeah, me too.
Well, I'm being honest. It is to think, you know, and I've, over these years, Tara, I've listened and read so much about people getting well from chronic illness, and have tried every single thing and thought, why isn't that me? Why? What is it I'm missing?
Yeah.
And I don't ever want to become complacent, and I don't want to ever feel that I can tell anyone else, because you can't. This illness is real.
Yeah.
Physically and mentally, it's real.
Yeah.
And it's devastating. And a few people online that I've, you know, because we've only been online, you know, when I first became ill, there was no such thing as the internet.
Right.
So yeah, I can't tell you what it was like with 3 tiny little children.
Right.
How to negotiate buying clothes and everything in those days. Well, you know, and then the internet came along and it was like, oh, what's this? And I can remember the first time I got a mobile phone, it was like, well, what do I do with it? You know, and subsequently, it's truly opened up a world, truly opened up an accessibility that I've never been able to access before.
Yeah.
I have a few people that I am in touch with via Instagram, via Facebook, that I'm very close to now, but I still haven't told them how long I was ill, or they don't know about this transformation, because they're in the thick of it.
Right. Right.
And one of the girls only in her 20s, and you know, the one thing I'm very grateful for is whatever situation mine was, at least I've got 3 daughters out of it.
Yeah. Amazing.
Looking back now, with the advice of my GP at the time, perhaps, you know, maybe, and each baby that I had was, of course, like, had a knock-on effect on my physical health.
Yeah, sure. Of course.
And I can remember my mum when my first baby, and I got thinner and thinner and thinner feeding, and this baby got fatter and fatter and fatter. And she said to me after a year, and she was amazing, my mum, and she just said to me, and she kept quiet for a year, and she just said to me, Diane, I'm not trying to tell you what to do, but I'm really concerned about you physically. And she said, your baby is fine and thriving, and you are getting thinner and thinner and thinner. So I stopped feeding at 14 months, and then, you know, so I mean, all of these, because obviously, you know, breastfeeding, well, all of it, the whole
All of
thing.
it. Yep. Yeah.
But I was so determined that's what I mean. So the only thing I will advocate for myself is, for some reason, I've had a backbone of steel. It's got very shaved off.
Yep.
But, you know, when I think back, and that is what sort of made me determined at varying stages in my life. But 35 years of feeling less than a human being, because that's what illness does.
Of course. Yep. That's what it does. But no more. So let me say this. So how has understanding that your breath is that one thing you have total control over, and how has learning to breathe differently really impacted your sense of a future now? What is this outlook or this new perspective that you have? How is it impacting, you don't have to go into details, but how is it impacting your relationships, your friendships, your ability to be active in your community, your self-confidence, all of these things? Your future must look very different to you than what it maybe did even a year or two ago.
Massive. My breath work now is the foundation of everything I do. And genuinely, I mean that, Tara, from the bottom of my heart. Every step that I take in the morning, my breath work is part and parcel. I mean, like, you know, bringing myself back down when I'm getting anxious is my breath work. All of it. So it is more than fundamental. And I will be honest, in that, you know, and people say, well, what started it? The diet started this journey, and it's still vital, but the breath work, because the diet at the moment is sort of a bit out the window because of the stress. But of course, you carry on breathing, as we know. Well, it's true, isn't it?
Yes.
So that is the underpinning of every minute I'm awake. And truly, I do believe that. So even just, and it's had an impact on my friends, everybody.
Yep.
Because there are people, like I've explained, my cousin, when we started the Wim Hof together, I told him about it, and he started it off with me. He unfortunately suffers from tinnitus, so he do the cold baths and the cold showers, still does, and I did the breathing. So we would laugh, and we're still very, very close. I'd just been in touch with him a few minutes before I came on to you. So and I say, from a friend's point of view, because for a long time I didn't mention I was doing the Wim Hof, because people, you know, you doing? What are you doing? You do 3 times a day, but you breathe all the time. But it's true, isn't it? But
Yes.
I've got a son-in-law who, right from the word go, he's always been really interested in the Wim Hof. So, and every book that I've bought, Patrick McHugh and all of this, every book that I've had, I've passed on to him.
Nice.
So all of and I feel like all of these have been little puzzles, pieces of the jigsaw, and you've been the glue that have stuck it all together. No, I'm being honest.
Yeah.
I'm honest. I mean, I am, because I can't be anything else. I am.
Yeah.
Patrick McEwen, and the thing with the Patrick McEwen book is it's been like that.
It is a bit like that. Yes.
I have real difficulty with weight, and so honestly and truthfully, I read. I'm leaning over in bed to read it and thinking, oh my God, I've got all the highlighting and the marking. Anyway, and I've just passed it on to my son-in-law, and I texted him and I said to him, would you like this book? And he's going, oh yes, please. And he said to me, how have you managed to read it? And I said, well, it's a tome, isn't it? Yeah. And so if I advise to anybody wanting to write a book about breathwork, could they please make it short and light for anybody like me? So on Tara, and I'm just saying, I know that you've got to ask me questions, but when I very first found you, I got in touch with you about the tuning forks.
Right.
I don't know if you remember. And
I do.
Do you?
Yes.
And it was you saying to me, and I mean, I couldn't bloody lift them. I couldn't have used them.
Right.
So, so I am just learning to. And so in this last 13 weeks, I've been to a shop for the first time in 35 years. So I've just carry home shopping.
Oh, wow. Wow.
I mean, it's not just the walking, it's everything.
It's your freedom. It's your autonomy. I mean.
And the other that I will just tell you very briefly, within this last 5 weeks, I have engaged with my village.
Yeah.
I bake every day, and I give my baking out every day. And
wow.
I started to give it out to the village and everybody sort of looked at me as if to say, at first, I think they were thought, what's this woman doing giving us baking? But I can't explain without getting so emotional that it's my joy of reconnecting with a world I never thought I would ever be able to reconnect with.
Yeah.
And just this morning, I just reconnected with somebody in the village. I went for a coffee, and this girl said to me, and I've got to know her really well. And she just said to me, are you new to the village? So I said, no, I've lived here for 38 years. And she went, have you? She said, oh, we've never seen you. So I said, well, no. And then you think, do I blow her mind and tell her? Or do you do? Anyway, I did. Well, she was that shocked.
Yeah.
And genuinely and honestly, and I think this is where I'm having to gauge people I tell and people I don't, because it's not, you can't just say to someone, I've been ill for 35 years, I've been housebound and bedbound, without them thinking, oh yeah, and trust me, as you well know, I've thought I was crazy before, but I am not going to let anybody tell me I'm crazy now for telling them that story, but it's the truth.
Absolutely. Well, Diane, I still think you have a book in you because I know you inspired that young lady tremendously and you inspire me. And I think your story would really inspire millions of people. Honestly, it's such a huge transformation and such a testament to what we are capable of doing for ourselves and how we're able to transform our physical body, how we can really use our mind, our breath to really change our physical health. I think it's so powerful.
That's what I think I believed with your tutelage, and I mean that genuinely, is that I have felt that my body is healing from the inside out. It's the outside in.
Right.
All the components that have come together, all the studying, all the diet, and I've never been clever. I've never been intelligent. And I know I'm telling myself that, and I am now. I'm not, I'm telling myself I am clever and I am intelligent, but it's that belief of what we tell ourselves, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So
it's everything. Yeah.
It is. And it's the coming together of the whole, of all the little bits.
Yeah.
Anyway, do you want to ask me another question?
Well, for all my breath nerds, I want to ask you one more question because you told me not only are you walking 7,000 to 13,000 steps a day, you told me you're also practicing the breath holds while you're walking up inclines in the village. And so the other day, how many steps did you take while holding your breath walking up the hill?
Walking up the hill today, I did 33 seconds.
Wow, great. And your Bolt score the other day, you said it was something like 45 or something like that. Is that consistent?
Yes. And when I first started with a Bolt score, which was, I don't know, when I first heard, it must have been Patrick McEwen. So that must have been probably a year ago. And I can remember thinking, what the heck is a Bolt score? And sort of looking at watching, and I think it was 21 seconds then. So that's what I mean. I know the difference, and again, it's the consistency, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, you really do the work. Like you said, you don't just read about it. You don't just think about it. You really do it. And I have spoken to you in times that I know you were feeling desperate, like when you were in the emergency room for hours and hours and hours, and you told me, I can't do anything else, so I'm going to do this thing. I think too many of us, and I've been guilty of this as well, is we have all these tools and it feels so easy to use them when we're feeling good. But then when we're feeling down and miserable and depressed and worthless, we don't want to use them. And that's when we need them the most. And so I really want to applaud you because when you are feeling down and not good and you're really at the bottom, you use your tools and it really helps you. And it's such a wonderful thing to watch. And I know that it serves you in seeing this massive improvement and this massive transformation.
When I was on my bathroom floor, that was only March this year.
Unbelievable.
Now I really was so desperately thinking I cannot live in this world anymore. The only thing I could do was the breathing.
Yeah.
And that all along has been, and that's why I will genuinely and honestly say to you, Tara, and if I ever do write a book, I would very, very much, because you and the breathing have been up there in making the difference, and I genuinely mean that. Yeah. I'm not to be sycophantic or no, but I'm not.
I know you're not. I know you're very genuine. I know. Yeah.
Well, I hope so, because it's the truth.
Yeah.
So definitely, you definitely be going to be a big part of it if I ever get round to doing it. I mean, I still feel a bit thought of, oh my God, because I just think I would never like anybody that's been as ill as I have to read something like my story now and think, oh my God, it's easy for her, because it hasn't been.
No.
It's hard fought. And But if there's anything that can be gained from my story, is that there is a little bit of hope.
Mm-hmm.
And a year ago, I spent 12 weeks last summer in the dark, desperately wanting to end my life. And I say I tried twice and thought it didn't work. I'm not going to bother with trying a third time. But it's true. And if I tell you those stories, that will blow your mind. But that's another, for another time if you want to know. So the impact that we have on others. And I think the other thing that I've realized my strength is that I've never really understood it. We come into this world alone and we leave this world alone. And along the way, you think, yeah, but everybody else is there for you. But ultimately, the only person you can rely on is you.
Yep.
As much as you've got daughters and husbands, and the only person you have to rely on is you.
Yep.
And it can be shit.
Yeah, it can be shit. It's a hard lesson to learn. I'm also coming into learning that lesson the hard way. So I agree with you completely. And it sounds harsh, I think, for people to hear it, but I actually think it's beautiful. I mean, to really foster this profound relationship with this physical vessel that you carry throughout your entire lifetime. You're the only one who inhabits this space 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, from the first breath you take to the last. And it's a very beautiful relationship that we really take for granted, or that we think it's selfish to pay attention there. But I think what you're discovering and what I'm discovering also is that it's vital to take care of this vessel, and it actually allows us to show up much more profoundly for those around us, for our community, for our family, and for all the endeavors that we want to pursue. I mean, you're transforming your village, you're baking for people every day and going around hand delivering these goodies. I mean, you couldn't do that when you were sick. And think about the impact that simple, beautiful gesture is having for them. You're transforming your entire village, not just yourself.
I think that is another thing that I think that I get upset thinking about it, because my genuine start with that was, have I got the courage and the guts to give somebody some of my baking? Because, everybody's down, everybody's busy, everybody's got their own lives, haven't they? But the transformation, and it's like every food delivery that I've had, I've given some of my baking to the delivery drivers, and the joy on their faces is unbelievable. And that is my reward. It's not the baking, it's not the giving, it's the transformation within their day. I mean, honestly, just being outside this morning at 5:10 in the morning with the sky, honestly, I'm in awe.
Yeah.
I am. So I don't have to climb Mount Kilimanjaro or Mount Everest, really, because just being outside at 5:10 in the morning is the joy.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.